Throughout childhood, we play with many toys, many times physical and nowadays more in the digital sense. Of course, when we refer to toys, it's mainly doodads and many plastic figures for a variety of purposes. And although I've had those experiences, I don't necessarily think they were a major part of my formation. I drew and wrote more on pieces of paper, using the imagination as a different sort of toy. Those figures also include Lego, as I didn't really have any sets nor any figures that summoned that childlike wonder. What did summon that childlike wonder was video games. Having two handhelds and a home console as a kid opened up many new experiences and stories that I've often envisioned fictional games and made fictional promotional pieces for them. So naturally I would gravitate more towards playing Lego video games, right? But again, I haven't had much experience beyond one or two handheld entries. The funny thing is that I am a sucker for licensed games, both the good and the bad, simply because I happen to be familiar with the intellectual property. But I have seen enough of these games over the years that I have developed an interest eventually, even more so with a certain other character, that being Batman, one of my favorite superheroes alongside Spider-Man when I was engaged with superheroes. Now, I didn't really engage with the whole universe of comics, but I loved the Batman the Animated Series and some other Batman shows. The fact that a character can remain as powerful as Batman through tonal changes in stories and the cast of villains and other characters throughout decades is remarkable. What do you get when you combine these three disparate elements? You get the Lego Batman the video game. Now, I've never actually played this game before. I have played the demo in some form, whether it was on my old slow personal computer or on the Xbox 360, but somehow I never played the full game. Until now. Months ago, there was a sale on Steam on Warner Brothers games, and I guess it was time that I played this game, along with picking up a few other entries. So, I'm going to take you on a journey throughout playing this first game for the very first time, seeing what it has to offer as an adult with childlike wonder. We got a few copyright statements and logos, the rating, and then the old Warner Brothers Games logo, and then the old DC logo. We see two goons trying to escape until Batman lands ominously to stop them, leading to a sequence that may be close to visually referencing the iconic intro from Batman the Animated Series. I love the way the Traveler's Tale logo appears at the end as two buildings, although I question how people are able to live in the perpetually leaning lowercase t. But anyway, we get the title screen and a bunch of options. Now there is an issue with the Steam version in that one of the vehicles doesn't work properly, and changing the refresh rate to 60Hz fixes it. Most significantly, the base resolution in this game is a smaller square. So in order to record this, I changed it to be 1920 by 1080 so that you can see it properly, but there are borders on the side. But if it looks a little stretched out, just so you know, it's meant to be on a smaller screen. I think this is the first game to introduce an original story to a Lego game rather than mere adaptation of the source material. Well, I say story, but it's simply Joker and every main Batman villain breaking out of Arkham and wreaking havoc in Gotham, leaving Batman and Robin to clear the streets and save the night. To be fair, it is different to adapt a whole universe of comics than a set of movies with a defined plot, so you pick and choose what elements make for a fun video game. Secondly, this would have been how a kid makes up a story with the minifigures in their free time, so it feels appropriate, especially with a premise that led you to fight each villain. There are animated cutscenes, but there are also the real-time cutscenes, which initially show a team of villains with one leading to pack with the main scheme. In the very first one, we got the Riddler rehearse his scheme with Clayface, Poison Ivy, and Mr. Freeze, starting off with the Raid of Gold. Episode 1, Chapter 1, You Can Bank on Batman. In this first level, we start off with an easy opponent, Clayface, who is taking over a bank. Immediately, we further establish the humor in this more action-oriented story through Robin tripping and falling off the building. The characters don't speak it, so this game pulls off action through sounds and movement. And this is where I'll lay out the controls here, mainly because it will be consistent throughout and form the foundation of future mechanics. You mainly use the jump and tackle, attack, switch between Batman and Robin, and use opponents. You mainly use the attack button for opponents. Or if you're like me, you can destroy anything in your path. You'll get stats for them that go into your stat gauge. Over in this first area, there are some pieces hopping and waiting to be built. And it's for a grapple hinge to get on top. There's also a Batman-themed mini-kit that you can get from climbing this ladder, a total of 10 in each level. It's a pretty smooth experience getting through this first level with controls that are functional and precise for a linear adventure game. Indeed, while the colors of each city environment aren't as moody as in, say, the Arkham games, they capture that grime and dirt in the alleyways and lighting that is reminiscent of the city, while also showcasing some color. Pretty soon you'll get your first outfit for Batman, the Demolition Suit, where you can place metal bombs for the shiny metal objects that get in your way and remote detonate from a comfortable distance. You know, people say that masculinity is about putting yourself first, dominating everything in your way. But they're wrong. It's about screaming. Being an action game, there are hordes of enemies to throw down with, sometimes for minutes at a time. It does feel monotonous for the times it feels as though there are several hordes consecutively, but those moments are sparse. Sometimes the enemies halt your building if they attack. Speaking of which, I built another suit pad for Robin this time, the Technology Suit. This is where special green remote pads can be utilized by Robin to control a remote object, mainly for opening up the rest of the level. This is where we finally encountered Clayface and accompanying goons robbing the bank. I suppose that in each level, Batman and Robin will knock out every supporting boss until we get to the main boss in each episode. I punched Clayface a few times, leading him to escape inside the metal gates with a bunch of shiny objects to stun him. I like this approach, using your abilities to help defeat the boss and make an entrance inside. Then I used the Batarang to push the buttons to get Clayface behind boss. Oh yeah, I haven't mentioned the Batarang yet. The Batarang is done by holding the attack button and moving the analog stick to an available target. It's a useful tool for destroying and activating far-away objects or a method of attack. I found it helpful when it came to enemies further away rather than close combat. So back to the boss. After defeating Clayface, we see the Riddler trying to escape with the big key running off to the reserve. After each level, you unlock free play, which I will not play of in this video. Any extra power-ups to abilities by collecting the red brick. I unfortunately couldn't find any others. The stud minute, to which if it's fully completed, you unlock a piece of the hero super kit. Stud totals and mini kits collected, which I think builds a figure. So why did I talk about this first level in depth? Well, it's the formula of every other level in this story, and secondly, I really like this formula. It rewards how much time you invested in, and each level has a baseline level of solid quality that doesn't lag in time too much. For each, I spend around 30 minutes to an hour of time through 1 or 2 levels each day. And part of that time was spent merely destroying everything for studs. It's fun, and also kid-friendly. As for the rest of the levels, I'll mainly talk about what's distinct about each of them in the highlights. Chapter 1, Episode 2, An Icy Reception. Next up we got Mr. Freeze, arguably the most tragic villain within the Batman mythos. We end up in the realms of an ice cream factory, after which, the first time I played this, I took too long to destroy the trucks. But regardless, the first suit, which we unlock in this level, was the magnetic suit for Robin, in which I can climb up on magnetic surfaces. It has a nice weight to it that you traverse slowly through. For Batman, you unlock the glide suit, which can help you reach longer gaps that short jumps can't reach. Usually you reach the other side to build something for Robin to reach, which makes sense since this is a game that works for co-op really well. But in my opinion, limits the uses of this ability, except for this area which you need another character for. But overall, you freeze the fans to make it through and get to the boss. Mr. Freeze is a really hard boss for one. He has a freeze gun that if you get too close to him, you get trapped in a block of ice. This is the one case where the directional pad on my controller came in handy, where it's evident that you press all 4 buttons quickly to get out. But I run around, wait till he gets confused, throw some punches, use the magnet suit for a platform to rise and reach the level to turn off the rays, After a while, I defeated him only for the Riddler to escape once again. Chapter 1, Episode 3, Two-Face Chase. In this level, Riddler tries to escape with Two-Face in a car even despite the barricades. So this is a vehicle level. This is a very quick change of pace. I'll be honest, it took an embarrassingly long time to figure out what to do to destroy the trucks. I thought I was supposed to ram into them to cause damage. After all, I did this to every other breakable object, why couldn't they be defeated? Turns out you press the attack button to shoot. I am slow sometimes. When driving, there's a drag and weight that makes you sway back and forth, like something is tugging behind you. It does take some getting used to and keeping the camera in view, but it's never uncontrollable. Later you have to tug the main trucks to the bat signal to take them into custody after destroying them, of course. It does drag a bit in the end when it comes to this boss battle, mainly because you have to tug it 3 times for it to truly end with dodging bombs and bullets. But overall, it's a fun level that at its most enjoyable with shooting everything. Chapter 1, Episode 4, A Poisonous Appointment. This time we're in a large apothecary garden which turns into a lab chamber midway through. A very fitting environment given poison ivy. It also shows the greater outside fog that coats the environment and gives an ominous and dusk atmosphere. There's so much dry grass, so I assume that the time or place this takes is very early spring. Or maybe neglect has taken place. You can build a big bulldozer to break as many objects as you can, but again, you can't destroy enemies, just knock them down. I unlocked a new suit for Batman, a blue suit known as the Sonic suit, where you hold a frequency ray to shatter glass Lego bricks, as Lego Alfred says. You can hold the button to aim it at a wider distance, although it does require some very specific positioning to shatter them. I think you can also stop enemies from immediately attacking by doing this as well, which makes this one of the customs that actually have some use in combat. That's not all. For Robin, you get to unlock the Attract suit, where you have a vacuum that can suck up small red, yellow, and green objects specifically. This suit has a very particular purpose, but I left the collectathon element for the greater purpose of this machine that once you get enough, builds an important invention to help you get to the next level. There's another single-purpose suit for Batman as well, as he receives the heat protection suit, mainly for utilizing the red-hot Lego pieces and traversing through the flames. Unlike the Attract suit though, it doesn't seem to have as much use outside of extra studs. But anyway, as you enter inside and find a laboratory, it becomes a jungle inside of a cave. Coming across the potions at a radioactive sludge river that you have to jump across, which was a little difficult to fully accomplish due to me not positioning my movement right. We get to Poison Ivy and the plant monster, in which, while it is mostly combat, you have to build the bombs to blow them up and knock out Poison Ivy. Not as cool as the rest of the level, but it was a really great one regardless that introduced so many cool elements. Chapter 1, Episode 5, The Face-Off. After knocking off the previous villains, we finally encountered the Riddler and Two-Face at the reserve. We got to break in somehow, so I built a security checkpoint and got a truck through. It seems as though they barricaded the door. Luckily, there's a convenient level platform to get us in. Finally, we meet Two-Face in the flesh and fight him. Well, maybe not fight him, as mainly he tries to escape and shoot at you. You build a powerboat to get close to him and he runs further into the vault. But before we get to truly fight him, the Riddler booby-trapped the entrance with lasers, so you have to jump over the flashing tiles to open the door. Finally, we get to the boss fight, and I managed to knock out Two-Face and some of the gold reserves. What do you think of that, Mr. Enigma? What are you gonna do now when I destroy the gold? After building a reflective shield to knock back the lasers, he gets down, and I don't think he puts that much of a fight at all. Like the coward he is, he retreats back and controls Two-Face to it, but after disabling the hypnotism and punching, he is now defeated. The only riddle that the Riddler has to solve is the life of Ellinger that he so desperately pursues. Chapter 2, Episode 1. We get the second set of villains, this time led by the Penguin. Let's start off with everyone's favorite latex cat girl, Catwoman. We start off in the city once again as we climb up to the rooftops to chase Catwoman into custody. Pretty routine as we defeat the goons and use the glide suit to fly over rooftops, and there's a mini-kit if you plant this garden and destroy it all, which is a cool reward. But overall, this is the most forgettable level so far. Not bad per se, each level has a baseline of solid quality, but this one doesn't really stick out in my mind. Even the boss is not memorable, it's just chasing her and giving her a few punches, making sure to avoid the whip. Honestly, in the back of my mind, it made me realize something. Catwoman is less interesting as a straightforward villain than as a rascally love interest to Batman. Chapter 2, Episode 2, Batboat Battle. Penguin sends out his massive ship to stop Batman. You want to know what that means? We got another vehicle level, this time on the water. It functions exactly like the Batmobile level in terms of controls and mechanics. Robin's jet ski has torpedoes that launch onto targets, which is a nice idea, especially when you have to aim it precisely at targets it switches to pass through. When it comes to the Penguin submarine battle, it can be quite overwhelming and chaotic at first, with all the green helicopters, floating bombs and gigantic lasers. This added to the loud and repetitive nature of this game. But the strategy here is to be consistent and keep moving, while also launching the torpedoes in the right position, which is tricky at first, but it is satisfying once you get that pattern down. Chapter 2, Episode 3, Under the City. We're staying in water this time, albeit much dirtier in the pursuit of Killer Croc, which, side note, as a kid he was petrifying to me, especially if you played Arkham Origins. The Killer Croc in this game is not quite as horrifying and is much more green than grey in this game, an intentional choice to make him appear colorful in contrast to the sewer and wastewater environments in this system. These environments are grey and stoic in its worn down concrete, only illuminated by the filthy water below, varying in the amounts of radioactive pollution. Though while it is fascinating to look at it from a macro scale, the moment-to-moment traversal feels kinda dull in spots, but it is hard to distinguish parts of the surroundings and what you can interact with and not. For Robin, you unlock the water suit, in which you can easily dive at will and sink underwater in any body that you can access, including the parts with actual crocodiles. It feels more made for this level given this environment, but it feels particular in what the game allows you to access, especially in the latter part of the level with the chambers. The disappointing aspect of this level is the boss. Well, it's arguably too simple to really even care for, where you have to dodge attacks and objects and punch when there's a free spawn. It's the most forgettable level of a cool, if quite unassuming level. Chapter 2, Episode 4, Zoo's Company. Back to the ground level this time, but we'll place the animals other than crocodiles. We go to the zoo and travel to where Man-Bat is hiding. Man-Bat has the title of a joke villain to me. Like, what if instead of a man who pretends to be a bat, what if we actually turn into a bat like an incomplete transformation? He also holds the distinction of being the first villain that I ever saw in the first episode of Batman the Animated Series, which is an odd first episode because it's not actually the first one in production order. Coming back to the game, it's a snowy night at the zoo where we need to get in. Somehow we can't break it ourselves, so we have got to build a big bulldozer again to break through. An odd beginning, but it does allow us to ride on a rocking penguin for some extra studs. Entering the zoo, there are so many animals that we can't necessarily interact with because it isn't free play mode. There is a part of the path that is blocked for both to cross through, so you have to control a fake turtle to not jump across, but trigger the bridge to get across. This was a nice puzzle even if it did take a bit longer than it was supposed to be. Anyway, we get to the second part of the level, which is a swamp with a load of crocodiles and lily pads. You have to do a little bit of platforming while jumping across them, which creates a bit of clunk with the layout of the level and the camera movement. As you remember, it's from a distance with the first player's character, so it's a bit difficult to judge where you are jumping on and to. After getting the demolition suit and bombing the deck, we end up in Man-Bat's hiding spot. I think I like this boss, even if it isn't too different than the other bosses in the combat. However, there is one part that really sticks out to me. In between the bombs, you have to build a large gramophone and vinyl player to reverse the music, which irritates Man-Bat to stop flying and get too distracted for you to punch again. It adds to the gameplay element of building Legos, but added with an element of humor that I really haven't seen in the rest of the game. Speaking of the humor, it's fine. I smiled a lot, but didn't really laugh at the goofy antics. But I imagine if I was a younger kid playing this before now, it would get way more of a rise out of me, being a kid who loved old slapstick and physical humor. Surprisingly, this is one of the most memorably good levels in my opinion. Chapter 2, Episode 5, Penguin's Lair. This level is surprisingly short compared to every other level, considering it's a main boss level. It's mainly crossing the ice and beating every shooter and exploding penguin. An interesting task for a mini-kid board is growing 3 carrots, which is such an odd thing to plant in the winter time. Anyway, the main part, and the best boss of the entire game, is with the penguin and the returning Catwoman. Basically, Cobblepot has this whole satellite signal powered by the bombing penguins, and you have to shut down the entire operation. Thankfully, the Catwoman fights are brief and unintrusive, but I love using the batarang to aim at 2 parts of the machine to shock the penguin. There he releases the exploding penguins at you, which I didn't know where they needed to go. The switch, one of many built throughout the game, is actually used for an unusual purpose, in that you redirect the penguins towards the power of the machine, towards other penguins. After doing this a few times, Cobblepot gets in on the action, but he tries to fly like the coward he is. Knock him down with the batarang and lay a few punches on him. Chapter 3, Episode 1, Joker's Home Turf. It seems as though we are near the end of the story as we approach the last few nemeses leading up to the Joker. First off, we got the Mad Hatter, another tragic villain if you ever watched that one episode of Batman the Animated Series that display his origin story. But anyway, as part of the final scheme, the Mad Hatter takes over at an abandoned factory with Joker's goons. As we enter, the green slime serves as a hazard that hurts us instantly. Let's get the suit with the vacuum to suck the objects, so that we can build a larger vacuum that we can drive to suck up all the green slime. As such, we get inside the industrial factory to find one of the chambers that he's hiding in. There's radioactive waste flowing alongside the grey-beige walls that you tried to locate the precise spot. To be honest, this level really started to drag on with its length due to the large pathways to that goal. And because it's story mode, you could do very little if face combat more often than not. There's also a chance that I'm playing this in the nighttime with a lack of energy, so I'm willing to believe both of these statements can coexist. On the topic of the boss, this is where it becomes strange, where part of it is bombing the machines that make him fall into radioactive waste. There was a moment where he was hypnotized one of the player characters and he tried to dodge. Turns out, you switch to the other character to release from that state. One of the few moments where it makes it more sense to play with another player. But anyway, doing that a few times stops his hoppy attitude from bouncing any further. Chapter 3, Episode 2, Little Fun at the Big Top. This feels like a slight change of pace. Instead of merely tracking a boss, we have to save Commissioner Gordon, to which Joker and Harley Quinn trap him inside an abandoned carnival. It's a more pleasant sight compared to the chambers, and an obviously fitting place given the Clown Prince and the Jester. The abandoned teacup ride, the restaurant with barbershop colors, and the booths that used to have fun games and rewards. The centerpiece is the boss with the cards and the open mouth where we fight Miss Harleen Quinzel for the first time. It's quite a long fight despite its relative simplicity. She pulls out a gun, you have to avoid her, strike back, and then chase her while she's backflipping over and over until she gets tired. Definitely felt like a drag in an otherwise good level. Chapter 3, Episode 3, Flight of the Bat. I was wondering when we got to Scarecrow, one of the scariest rogues and personally speaking, one of my favorites. He specializes in psychological horror and his offenses come in truly paralyzing people. So naturally you want him to be in a biplane in this action-oriented game. It makes sense, but it feels like it's a missed opportunity. Anyway, we have another vehicle level, this time in the Batwing. It functions like the other levels in that there are torpedoes shooting everything and tugging along objects for the rest of the level to happen. Although in this case, tugging along proved to be difficult mainly because the physics felt really heavy. Scarecrow dogfight is decent, even if it also is a missed opportunity to throw scare bombs. tugging the enemy, then launching the torpedo at it to cause damage is another moment that flows smoother in co-op with another player. Chapter 3, Episode 4, In the Dark Night. We are near the very end, but this is a bit of a curveball. Killer Moth is a villain I've never heard of or seen before, being a villain that shows up in comics and shows, with this being one of the few game appearances. There's a cool concept here. Like Batman, he has his own suit of gadgets, and a suit that is the brightest object in the entire game with its choice of colors. This is another level with some very set pieces, in which we walk through the bends on the street to get into the club. There was a point in which there were several hordes of enemies consecutively, and it got tiring, and I'm not sure if that is an error or by intention of difficulty. After getting inside, we blow out the lights to enter properly onto the dance floor, which is a cool set piece to activate the glowing tiles that reconstruct the speakers to work. You unleash the disco robot to break a hole in the wall. Kind of a shame because this robot's pretty cool. Anyway, escaping to the building in the back of a club leads us to Killer Moth. This boss battle is interesting to say the least. Much like the Man-Bat fight, it relies on a certain pattern that relates to the character in some way. In this case, you got to turn on the light bulb that is too hot for Killer Moth. Not as funny as the record player, but still effective in its humor. Chapter 3, Episode 5, To the Top of the Tower. The final level that reaches a culmination, both figurative and literal, as we reach to the top of the church and the clock tower. To further that step towards greater completion, I got a few of the mini kits on the side. Anyway, Holy Grid returns to try to stop us from pulling the big guns out effectively. In general, this level feels like a grand climb to the top, even if the actual time is shorter than usual. Jumping across gaps, raising levers, and jumping over the ledges. The final battle with the Joker feels like a grand finale, with at first knocking both of them out of the bell. Out of nowhere, we get another shooting segment as the Joker unleashes one of his henchmen in the helicopter to shoot them, alternating between shooting and dodging. Joker comes out for the fight, shocking you to switch to the other player, not as cool as before, but still solid. Finally, as we almost get knocked out, Batman unveils one last trick in a humorous twist involving his name. It feels anticlimactic at first, but it works in this game's inherent goofiness on the source material. As we get to the final scenes over the rooftop, it looks like we've saved the night. However, how did the night need to be saved? Because to my surprise, we get a whole half of the game to be completed. In the Batcave, which is where you can check level stats and other character information as such, in one part, we pull down the lever and we switch to Arkham Asylum where there are fights and jail cells everywhere. Much like the Wayne Manor, the villains have their own trophy room at set of levels. While these levels have the same level structure as before, there are more villains to consider and each have their own distinct levels, filling in the rest of the story. As such, I will talk about each pair of villains as I experience throughout the game. Clayface and the Riddler. The Riddler's got a separate task for Clayface, involving breaking into the Gotham Bank as we see the same cutscene from the hero story. But on our chronological timeline, this happens way before Batman gets there. In fact, we start off below Gotham in the tunnels. To be honest, at the end of the hero story, I was feeling the length of this game and how, while it is an enjoyable and good experience, it was feeling repetitive, especially with the limitations of Batman and Robin, regardless of how many suits you give them. That, however, changes starting with these two characters. Clayface, with his old man voice, can do a double jump to reach higher spots, and has super strength, so we can finally lift those objects with orange handles, either to get them out of the way or dragging them to a place you can now reach. The Riddler, on the other hand, does not have as many obvious abilities. His main one comes in being able to hypnotize people with his question mark staff to control temporarily, in which they are usually in a locked part of the level, usually to activate a lever and unlock the next part of the level. When it comes to the combat, it remains the same as before with a few hits until it's a knockout. When it comes to the special moves, however, there is a bit of characteristic flair, where the Riddler does some acrobatics, but he's a pretty weak guy, being the weakling that he is. Clayface can extend out his arms and pull a bigger punch. We build a big vehicle with a wrecking ball to demolish everything in our path, and it really feels like we're playing as villains, wrecking Gotham in our path. Admittedly, the next part I think took a while to finish, mainly because I didn't know what to do next, until it was obvious in breaking apart to build something new. Mr. Freeze and the Riddler. The next part, following along the second level in the hero story, Riddler has got to assist Mr. Freeze in breaking into the ice cream factory. Mr. Freeze has super strength like Clayface, though oddly it's only used once at the beginning, to which I didn't know how to progress because I didn't know he also had super strength. His main ability, as given away by his name, is the power of ice with his freeze gun. Okay, so I'm not sure if it's me or the game, but there are recurring moments in which it's hard to tell what to do next, in that the environment is large enough in your area that it's not immediately noticeable. Or maybe it's just me playing this at night in which I don't have a lot of energy. But inside the factory, we can use the ice powers for combat or more instant death as you freeze them. Later inside, when it comes to the flavored river, we can create frozen platforms on them. This leads to a nice co-op moment with the Riddler in which you have to control from the ice to pull the lever to raise the liquid. Overall, through the final section, this is probably one of the best levels that utilize this co-op aspect, switching between each to get through while also not leaving one behind. Poison Ivy and the Riddler. It's Poison Ivy's turn now, where we take over the massive greenhouse. Much like Mr. Freeze, we have a level that's tailored around her aesthetic. If that isn't obvious enough, there's a small plant vehicle and a big Venus flytrap to destroy every single plant in the garden. Her ability though is very specified. With these empty brown pots, you could summon your magical plant abilities to grow them and use as a platform, or a jumping pad to reach larger distances or heights. Outside of this level, I haven't seen a whole lot of these pots in other levels, so this feels limited once again. I like the contrast between the modest and beautiful garden and inside the building where the walls are plain and worn down, before getting to the sewer and reaching inside the greenhouse. Speaking of the greenhouse, this is one of those moments where, like one level of the hero story, there was a seemingly endless horde of enemies coming in, and you have to construct the plants through a mechanism while defeating them. Again, this is one of those parts that slightly drag down the experience, even if you're playing in co-op, because it becomes repetitive after minutes at a time. But overall, it's a nice level. Two-Face and the Riddler. Here we have the main duo of the first chapter, and the first with 2 consecutive levels, both involving the monetary reserve. The first level is to grab a powerful freeze wave for Two-Face in the realms of the brain. Two-Face doesn't seem like a powerful character at first. He's a partially mutated guy with a gun. However, he holds 2 guns in fact, which when pressing the attack button on near any object is extremely useful and quick for destroying any breakable objects and enemies at a distance. When it comes to the enemies, it's not automatic aiming, but it works when facing the direction of enemies and when you're far away to shoot. He is also immune to the toxins, meaning that he can walk to the green slime. It's hard to tell that he can do that unless you notice the details of a green gas emitting when he walks. It's a nice change of pace from the outside dirty or concrete environments, or older buildings with some wear and tear, to a clean and somewhat modern and futuristic building with a mix of blue-gray and light-gray walls mixed with light-orange paneling that should seem garish, but mix very well to a palatable aesthetic. It also helps that I am partial to orange as a color. Also, you get to control a few robots, one smaller and bulkier to get through the lasers. I love how these lasers look like small rods with red lights projecting for the Lego style. And one massive mechanical monster at the end that can destroy everything. If this game is reminiscent of toys, this is a definite example of that, giving a kid the maximum power to destroy everything. That power scales for the following level when it comes to the maximum security reserve. At one point, you get to control the helicopter to shoot the door open. As you go through, it feels more like a heist. As you sabotage the security, you get closer to the gold. Really feels as though you're taking over the money of Gotham. Bane and the Penguin. We now reach the second chapter with the Penguin, where the scheme is constructed more steadily instead of a main ambush. To my surprise, we get someone new we can play as in the opening dialogue intro, Bane. Upon seeing this, I thought, oh wait, Bane was there in the cutscene. Why didn't we fight them as Batman and Robin? This level answers that by filling in the storyline of the docks, as we have to build the Penguin transmitter. As the Penguin, you can place bombs through the bomb penguins, much like Batman's demolition suit. However, the bombs are not static objects that waddle around, so there's a neat bit of strategy in knowing where to place them and detonate them. He also has gliding abilities with his umbrella. We might as well talk about Bane. He's a heavy character and has super strength, and like Two-Face, he can rock through green toxins, but the former two has more uses. For example, in combat, you can lift enemies to throw them upwards, or for a more shocking attack, you can break their backs. I'm shocked that they are able to get away with that in this game, but it is cartoonish enough that it's funny and fun to execute. You can also tell that he's heavy in that his steps are large. There's a section of objects with orange handles that block this exit, but it's so instantaneous to lift up every single object in this area. It's a pretty good level, but I love the ending, where Penguin abandons Bane to be left by the cops. And it's the one time where the physical humor made me laugh a bit, mainly because of the juxtaposition of this character that we just played as and him failing. Killer Croc and the Penguin. I'm surprised that Killer Croc is actually seen with the Penguin, considering how separate his hero level was in the story. Here we have another set of 2 levels, although not in the same form. This first form is in the vehicle segment, the water form like in the hero level. Here we have Killer Croc's speedboat, which is very speedy in terms of its driving and shooting. Penguin Submarine is quite the opposite. It's heavy and slow, and quite honestly difficult to control well, because I'm trying to steer and I keep getting shot by enemy boats. It feels like something tugging you back. You can duck underwater to get under obstacles and shoot from below. This boss battle was difficult mainly because of this problem. Like, I achieved the superhero level, but I died so many times that I finished under with 5,000 studs. It was honestly a bit annoying because I'm trying to shoot, but my obese ship cannot avoid the projectiles a lot faster. The second level with these two is much less of a headache, since we also get another new story element filling in the storyline, which is that they have to free Catwoman from jail. We end up in the sewer and climb up to the Gotham Police Department. We get to free some criminals and beat up some cops. I think Killer Croc has similar moves to Bane, although he throws horizontally instead of vertically. Anyway, this level is nice and short enough to break everything and free the latex Catgirl. Speaking of which, Catwoman and the Penguin. I did talk bad about Catwoman earlier, but I liked playing her as a character in this level, in which you're on the rooftops again. You can double jump and have a whip, which is extremely useful for combat. When it comes to the security people, you can wound them to let you through. There's not much more, but it is nice for the 7th and 10th levels. We land in a cave with a big machine to turn it on, and there are these lasers that you can push through to light each electric rod. Harley Quinn and the Joker. The final chapter of the entire game, and we bookend with the first and last level of the entire chapter with the Clown Prince of Crime and his gesture. They're mainly supposed to be together, and that makes the partner AI a little finicky if you mess up an action at one point, and they're supposed to do 2 different things that unlock the next part of the level. Harley Quinn has the abilities of double jumping like Catwoman and Clayface, really thinking that the scope of this game and the limited deadline caused them to cut corners on unique abilities and reuse for several characters. There aren't any unique abilities for her, just the double pistols like Two-Face for combat. There is a special ability where you pull out a big mallet to destroy instantly and do backflips, so that's something at least. It's weird that the double jumping isn't utilized that much outside of other collectibles or the spare bit of platforming. And you realize that controls aren't quite as precise to make double jumping that comfortable without falling, and the depth perception can mess up them. The Joker doesn't have that many unique abilities as well, outside of one, which are these generators that you can electrically control to activate platforms or objects. You can also electrically buzz enemies as well, which is fitting of old-time novelty pranks. In that first level with the two, there's a boss battle with Commissioner Gordon, in which you have to control this crane in order to lift the exploding teddy bear and detonate the truck. These controls are finicky as well, since I held the analog stick outside, but it didn't work and rocked it back and forth until it was able to move. This was actively frustrating since it made this battle last way longer than it should be. The last level is not as long thankfully, but there are similar frustrations with the double jumping I mentioned earlier. It's a much more straightforward level otherwise, with you climbing up the tower and constructing the machine for maximum chaos, which leads to a rather abrupt ending. And wow, I'm really tired after beating this game. But before we end this off, there's a couple more characters to touch upon. Scarecrow and the Joker. We have the plane level once again in the Scarecrow's biplane. It functions like the other airplane levels before, with the bombs so you have to tug along to destroy. It's fine. We actually get to play as Scarecrow when we both crash land in the museum. Unfortunately, I don't think Scarecrow has any unique abilities outside of scaring people to death and to get through the door with the security person. It's not much of an issue, but it was a disappointing thing to encounter. Also, am I thinking that the ending was quite abrupt, ending just as we are about to fight some enemies? Killer Moth and the Joker. Last but certainly least, we've got Killer Moth, who can glide and has a pistol to shoot. There's nothing special, I think I forgot about this level, except with the wackiest mecha I think I've ever seen at the very end. And I think that's every level in this game, which I think fully encapsulates my experience with this. That's definitely long. I think it took me almost a full month to fully beat this game, but was it good enough to play for that long? I argue yes, it is very good, even great in spots. I had a ton of fun playing through this game I wanted to play for such a long time, and it was a good callback to the toys I had in my childhood and the action fun I had with them. Now I would admit, this is a more optimal experience playing co-op than solo, if only to get the length feeling less as a result of more getting done and the chaotic nature of fights. But I also admit that there's a good share of clunk and lack of refinement in being the perfect controls for this type of experience. But also looking at the number of LEGO games released in a short time span, it's understandable that that would happen. But overall, it's just charming, and the music, while taken from another movie, adds a little bit of whimsical and epic flair to the antics on screen. At the end of the day, for a licensed game centered around toys, there's a solid formula at work here, and while it did nitpick stuff, I ultimately didn't have a bad time with how it functions. In fact, it was comforting that every night I play a few levels and have some simple fun, much like building bricks in a physical and figurative form. Maybe I'll get to the other LEGO Batman games, there's 3 or more of them, but for now, maybe I'll like to build something else. Take care, and have a good day.